something to eat. So the first thing was to grow the plants. Then the animals were also brought in. Many of them were brought from many other planets throughout the solar systems, the galaxies.
Huh.
They have traveling zoos, really, on these ships.
Is that kind of like the Noah's Ark story?
Yes, it is. Because they would bring these from many different places, and sometimes they had to genetically alter them so they could adapt to life where they had to leave them. And it was done simple at first, and then became more and more complicated. This was a huge scientific experiment, I guess you would say.
Where did they come from originally, Dolores, those that came to seed the planet?
Everywhere. You'd be amazed. They said that was their specific mission, and many of them lived on the craft. They never went back to the original planet. Some of them had their families on board these crafts, and they just went throughout the galaxies doing this work. It was their assignment. But I've had other people go back to lifetimes on other planets where they were living lives. They were working in laboratories. They came from everywhere. And in my work, I have found, hundreds of different types of ETs. They're not just a few. And they all have different jobs.
All right, Dolores, you stay with us. We're going to take this quick break. Dolores' website, by the way, and let me spell it for you because it's ozarkmt.com, but it's spelled OZARKMT.com. We'll be back in a moment. And, you know, her belief of this does not negate a divine creator. We'll talk with her about that when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM. And as you know, the Coast to Coast AM app, free to all users of the iPhone and iPod Touch, exciting new way for fans of the show to stay in touch, as well as for Streamlink subscribers to get show audio directly from their mobile device. You probably know about this by now, but if you don't, you can get all the information by going to coasttocoastam.com. And welcome back to Coast. We've got Dolores Cannon tonight. Dolores, because you said this was controversial, and it is for some who are staunch believers in the Bible and very religious, I have not heard you say anything about not believing in a divine creator here. Somebody had to create the cedars and those that came around and did what they did throughout these various planetary systems, I assume, right?
Yes, and we have a very strong belief in God because in my work, we have had people go back to the source when they were created. This is what they call it, the source, what we call God. Now, you know, to accept everything I'm saying, you have to also understand about reincarnation, and, those are also controversial beliefs. But I've had many people go back to the beginning when they were created, and this is also in my books, their description of what God is and where we all came from. And so the ETs also came from God. See, that's what we don't understand. You just don't live a body as a human. This is only one school that you go to, and that's all it is, a school. You learn lessons. You've also had lives as ETs, if you want to call them that, aliens on other planets and other dimensions. And I've had some go back to where they've gone past ETs to where they were beings of light. So anything is possible. But all of this they all came from God because we are, the real you is your soul, your spirit.
Sure.
That is the part that was created by God.
We'll get into these various waves in a moment, but you had mentioned earlier these that all this started, the new ones, the ones who've been coming here of late. It's been the last 50 years. So there's a reason for that, isn't there?
Yeah, we got plenty of time, so I guess I can build up to that. Is that okay?
All right.
All right, but one thing about God, the ETs, if you want to call them that, are closer to God than we will ever be because they don't eat. You know, that's one of the things. Their organs have atrophied. They don't have to consume food anymore. These are certain types. And I asked them what they live on. They said they live on light. And I said, where does the light come from? It comes from the source. So without God, they couldn't live. It's absorbed through their body, and this is what keeps them alive.
Are they physical?
Some of them are. They're very physical. Their organs have atrophied, so they don't function like we do. Some people say they may be even us in the future, which is a possibility also.
Well, that is true, too.
So there's all kinds of theories. But what they have said is in the very, very beginning, they started the seedings because God, the source, told them to do it, to go out and begin to populate the world. So they're doing it under instructions. So you can say it's a creationist theory and the evolutionist theory combined into one. So neither one stands alone. It is a combination of the two.
Were some of these giants as reported in the Bible?
Definitely. That everything in the Bible is true to a certain extent. The part there about the first Jehovah and E.T., that part, that is what Zecharia Sitchin came up with. Those are the ones that came much, much later after the planet was formed. There were life, there was beings here, and they're the ones that wanted to use it for the wrong reasons. So that's the beginning of the Old Testament, are those creatures that Zechariah writes about. But there were definitely giants. In the beginning, there were some people that had blue skin, green skin, purple skin. They were all different experiments, and some of them survived and some of them died out. But when they began, some of the animals did develop on Earth genetically, and other ones were brought in. But they had to find an animal that they could develop into an intelligent being. This took eons of time, but they finally decided that the monkey was the best one. Here again, this may upset people, but they had to have an animal that had hands so they could make tools later, and also have a large brain capacity. So they took the monkey and they genetically modified it to become a human being. And they've told me the missing link will never be found because it jumped generations and species so fast from what they began with until what eventually became Homo sapiens. I asked them one time, I said, didn't life ever occur just spontaneously and indigenously on any planet? They said no, because if they did, it would have been chaotic. It would not have had a plan. They said for you to develop into an intelligent human being, that it happened spontaneously, it would have taken 1 million more years than it did to have an intelligent being on this planet. So it had to be planned and studied very carefully for what was developing. So let's get up and jump to, okay, I know a little more to tell before we get up to